There's a gate I quite like at school. 19 or so line Harvard Yard, some adorned with towering piers and elaborate ironwork, engraved in stone to the memory of grander men and to grander purpose. On the south side, in the corner closest to where I lived last year, a small, unassuming one opens into what would be charitably described as an entryway. The Dexter Gate, which there stood since 1901, was a gift from a mother, Mrs. Wirt Dexter, in memory of her son, Samuel, who, but for poor health, I imagine would have lived and loved to see it. At first glance, it's admittedly nothing spectacular. The Johnston Gate, with its iron doors extending as if to the sky, attracts crowds by the dozens. The McCain, lacing ivory-covered brick in elegant limestone, is certainly a more usual sight for tourists to stop. Yet over both sides of its entrance, in the space of no more than 3 feet, the Dexter Gate boasts the most compelling inscription for students and teachers alike. Into the yard, it reads, "Enter to grow in wisdom." Onto the street, "Depart to serve better thy kind and country." To be honest, I'm surprised it took until 1901 for someone to write that down. These words, which come from Charles William Eliot, president of the university for 40 years, stand at the center of his, and admittedly my, position on why what you all do is so, so important. For, just as President Eliot in this aim instituted an elective system, encouraged public service, and embraced greater access to those like Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, so should you continue the good work of IB. To develop inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. As they say, it takes a village. Were it not for every teacher, for every counselor, for every administrator who held my hand and had my back, I haven't the slightest bit of doubt that I would probably not be standing here today. Although by the length of that last sentence, I know some English teacher of mine somewhere is shaking her head. In 2 years of IB and 4 of MYP, I studied everything from quantum physics to crime and punishment to conquistadors in Latin America. I've taken samples from local streams, written a sonata, read Hamlet, and actually used the word beautiful once to describe an equation. When I had the time, I volunteered with children or charities, and when I lost a dear friend, I coped in TOK. You see, these are things that get lost in the midst of test scores and benchmarks. Too many places, too many programs spend too much time weighing the pig instead of fattening it. Too often, students are given answers to remember instead of problems to solve. And if there's something truly curious about people, something peculiar about the way we work, which in my experience is especially true of students, is that we fit ourselves to the things life throws us. We stare down essays and exams, practices and problem sets, readings and rehearsals, and we set goals by the context in which we encounter them. We say, I'm going to get that grade because that means I'm in this or that percentile. I'm going to take this test to meet this prerequisite. I'm going to take this class because, well, that's what everybody does. And in this vicious cycle, diplomas are passed onto student after student, each not having remembered more than a 4-digit number or a 4-point scale that serves as the sum of their education. I remember as I sat to write my first resume, legitimately puzzled as to why all of 2 lines were the appropriate length for the 4 years I spent in South Lakes, and the 4 I planned to spend at Harvard. Was this really all that mattered? How could I not mention my hours of research on post-independence Paraguay? What about all the topics I chose, the subjects I explored, just because? What about the essays I wrote on calculus or the equations I used for music? What about the skills I picked up, the passions, the service? Were these not equally part of my education? Even later at Harvard, where I've met smart people, brilliant people, I still find myself surprised by the number of scientists afraid of poetry, or the musicians that steer clear of math. Not to mention the lucky few who somehow escaped learning how to cite, like my freshman roommate. In retrospect, I guess it's because I was taught differently. Looking back on all the courses I took, there was no separating physics from philosophy or pronunciation from politics. We just learned. We were encouraged by great teachers, great people, to explore as many of our interests as possible, and, well, to run with it. After IB, it's just hard to put yourself in a box. When you've proposed an extended essay relating the critical acclaim of existentialism to the Second World War and no one in the room has laughed at you, it's hard to only feel safe in your comfort zone. When you've turned in a physics lab report putting 3,000-year-old philosophy to the scientific method, why feel afraid to branch out? You see, it's not just writing on Castro's Cuba, on Shakespeare's Hamlet, on Newton's laws, but in how doing so forces you to study. It's the experience. As Einstein said, education is what remains after one has forgotten he learned in school. It's the problem solving, the project skills. Through these programs, we collaborate, we tackle the great mountains of academics not alone, but together. We read, we write, we think, not in isolation of any one subject or any one essay, but as part of a greater and deeper academic. We learn to embrace what we're interested in, what we do know, what we don't know, what we're good at, and where we could use some help, and we ask for that help. In time, we love every moment of doing it. We communicate, we ask questions, we give answers, and we seek the true nature of those problems we hope to solve. And then, we do. These are the merits of this program. Your future students need not take my same course load. Truth be told, as some of my teachers will surely tell you, they need not replicate me at all. But they will need these skills. They'll need to be able to work and think together, to make these connections, to become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners. They'll need your support. They'll need you there to challenge them, to push them, to keep them honest, and to reach out and believe in them even when they themselves don't. If my record looks at all impressive, it's grace to the many hands that pushed me along. To Mr. Powell, who kept tabs on me while I put together my personal project. To Mr. Sharp, who would lecture about philosophy once I got my grip on calculus. And to Ms. Bachman, who was always there, and to Ms. Lieberman, who kept me humble. This extends equally to those like me who did the diploma, and the many of my friends who took certificates. It really does take a village. I'm honored to have been given the chance to come back home and say thank you to mine. And I thank you for the great work that you're doing in this county.